the goldfish link for what we have so far today. We're getting some madness cards. That's kind of exciting. So we've got Fiery Temper and Insolent Neonate here as extra friends. This card is especially dangerous inside of something like Faithless Looting that we have in Historic. Perhaps Faithless Looting is a card in Historic so far that we haven't seen really pop up outside of the Phoenix decks, and Fiery Temper could perhaps help push Faithless Looting in a different direction. Blazing Rootwalla too. These seem like two cards that could potentially be dangerous to introduce to the format alongside Looting. Because one of the things we've talked about consistently in Historic is that the reason why Looting has not really been ubiquitous like it was in Modern for a long time is due to the fact that there's not incidental cards that you can play that generate value with it to mitigate the fact that it's card disadvantage. And things like Blazing Rootwalla and Fiery Temper help mitigate those effects. And Insolent Neonate, while not quite as powerful as Faithless Looting, is redundancy because it offers a similar style of effect. In fact, the one thing that pops out in my mind that might be worth revisiting is I wonder if Hollowed One is going to be something that we want to look into with Faithless Looting and Neonate and some of the other cards we have in Historic. That'd be something to poke at, I think, with these Madness cards. Swimmer, thanks for the 13 months. Welcome back. Mana Gorger Phoenix, 2/2 for 2. Can't block flying. When you cast a spell, if it's in your graveyard, put a flame counter on it. For each red in that spell's cost, there's 5 or more flame counters. Return it to the battlefield and give it +1/+1 perpetually. A flame counter on it for each red in that spell's mana cost. Okay, so this is sweet with Faithless Looting too, huh? And something to note here, this has synergy, yes, with Fiery Temper, because this doesn't say what you paid to cast it. It says in its casting cost. So if you Madness Fiery Temper for 1 red, it's going to give you 2 towards Mana Gorger. If you Madness Rootwalla for 0, it's going to give you 1 towards Mana Gorger Phoenix. Yes, perpetually is a new keyword that does as it implies, which gives you a permanent modifier across that, a modifier that tracks across all zones, which is new and unique to Magic. Scale Up is interesting. I wonder if some Feather decks will want this card. Make something a 6/4 until end of turn, and then it overwhelms in the late game to give you this kind of big burst. You can see that happening. Hardened Scales is a sweet one. We've seen people playing with +1/+1 counters on the fringes of Historic before, and Hardened Scales is a really efficient way to do that. Ozolith is already legal in the format. We saw a couple of other modular cards in earlier spoiler days. Zaba, the Glimmerwisp here, is another card that synergizes with modular things, so this could be an archetype that pops up. Static Discharge deals X to any target where X is 3 plus the number of charge counters on Static Discharge, then put a perpetual charge counter on this card and each card named Static Discharge in your hand, library, and deck. So it does 3, 4, 5, 6. That's cute. Like, it's a sorcery speed lightning strike to start, but it scales up as you go longer. And notably, unlike a lot of cards like Lava Coil and stuff that do extra damage as red spells, this does deal damage to any target. So it goes Dome is the relevant difference between this and some of the other red removal spells we've seen at 2 mana variations. Yeah, it's a burn spell, right? They gave us the squirrels, chat. I am so excited that they gave us squirrels. We've got Squirrel Sovereign. We've got Squirrel Mob. We've got Ravenous Squirrel. We've got Chatterfang, the Squirrel General. So, giving this Storm is not useful with Thousand Year Storm because it does not put charge counters on the static discharges on the stack currently. So if you had a second Static Discharge in your hand, you could storm off with this and then build up the one in your hand. But at that point, they're probably dead anyways, right? After you sacrifice an artifact or creature, put a 1/1 counter on this. Sacrifice an artifact creature, gain 1. Wow. Yeah, this is really good in the food decks, huh? You loop, it's another decent 1-drop, and you loop the cat. A cat loop gives this +2/+2. That's a big addition for food, I think. Seems very, very reasonable. These all got spoiled at the end of yesterday. Yawgmoth Thran Physician here is a combo card in Modern, but it combos specifically with Undying creatures, so this probably won't be a combo card in Historic so much as could just be a value card. It's a basically free sacrifice outlet, and I wonder if this could be good enough as a top end to maybe enable a red-black sacrifice deck. Maybe you play this instead of Collected Company, and perhaps red-black sack is worth exploring in Historic games. This is a pretty powerful card advantage engine that also lets you play to the board in terms of putting minus counters on things. So like this is black-green, but it's also mono-black, right? So you could play this as a black 1-drop inside of mono-black sack and have like a more aggressively slanted sacrifice deck. I think I'd want to try this with. This is one of my pet cards in sacrifice decks is 3-mana Chandra, and curving 3-mana Chandra into Yawgmoth Thran Physician lets you draw 2 cards off of her 0, right? Because you'll have 2 elementals to sacrifice, so that seems sweet. One card that doesn't look like is in here that they're missing that's relevant. We talked about these previously, so click to the other videos if you haven't seen that, is Muldrifter was spoiled. And I honestly don't know that this card is good enough for Historic. Like, when this card was standard playable, the format looked very different. I think slower and more fair than Historic is, but this is a card that will exist in the format. Yeah, there's a ton of them. And again, if you want my thoughts on lots of these other good, sweet, interesting spoilers, there's a couple of videos up on the YouTube channel for that. Yeah, Muldrifter, part of this too, and this is something you want to think about, is not only is this set and Jumpstart about adding cards to Historic, but a lot of these cards are about making Cube better. So they are definitely interested in moving as many of their Cube players from Magic Online over to Magic Arena, I would wager. That's having a good Cube with lots of powerful, interesting cards is in their best interest. Yeah. The first time Cube comes back after Historic Horizons release is going to be just absolutely absurd. It's going to be a completely different format than what we've seen so far. That's true. We do have Ephemerate with Muldrifter in Historic, technically speaking. I would wager we are heading in the direction of Vintage Cube sooner rather than later. Would be my estimation. A lot of the cards that are sweet in Vintage Cube aren't that complicated to program. They could easily put Moxen on the platform without having them be legal in Historic. All right, sweet. So that's everything on that. We're going to go ahead and shift gears for the last couple hours of the stream. We're going to play some more Pokemon Unite.